Yeah, we're
Okay.
supposed to go live now. Let me check here. Hello, everybody.
Can we see if people are watching live?
Yeah, we can. We can see it's recording already. We are live here. And people can share ideas and ask us as well.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, let's do it. So, hello everybody. Happy Monday and welcome to 2025. It's like the year is starting right now because January was so long.
It's true. This is your first episode
Yeah,
in 2025.
yeah, like live, yeah.
Okay. All
So
right.
you're gonna be the first. I'm
Amazing.
here with a friend, American friend from Vermont in the US. Yeah, living in Portugal since 2021, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So welcome in Caitlin Boylan,
Thank you.
and thank you for accepting the invitation. Let me check if I can see us on YouTube, but I believe we do. So let us know a little bit more about you and your story. It's gonna be let me say it first. Sorry, it's gonna be saved here on live,
Okay.
so people can watch after that if you don't have time to watch now. But it's gonna be saved here. And this live is gonna be in English. If someone have any question in Portuguese, we can translate, and Caitlin can understand Portuguese a little bit as well. Yeah. And thank you for everybody can come in here. Then subscribe. Please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like here. And if you have any questions in the future, leave the comments. Then Caitlin can answer it as well in the future. So
Yeah.
welcome in again and share a little bit about your story, Caitlin, with us.
Yeah. So I am originally from Vermont in the US, which is the Northeast. It's a small state. And I went abroad. Well, let's see. I went to college down in Maryland, which is also the East Coast, but a lot farther down to the south. And then um, and then I went abroad. So I studied abroad 3 times in college. I studied abroad in Mexico, Morocco, and Ireland. But in chronological order is Mexico, Ireland, and Morocco. And then after college, I went back to Ireland for a working holiday visa. Um, so I did 1 year back in Ireland after college, and I mostly rode horses and I did like work exchange in hostels. And then I went back to the US and I went and got my CELTA, which is a certificate in English language teaching to adults in Montreal, which is Canada. And then after I had that, I moved to Vietnam to teach English there. I was living in Ho Chi Minh. So I was there for about a year and a half. And then I decided to move on again. And after doing some traveling, I went to Australia on a working holiday visa there. And I was there for a year. I started as an au pair, and then I went back to teaching English in Sydney. Um, and then I left there with a Spanish boyfriend, and we moved to Prague together after traveling for a while. And so we lived in Prague for a little while. Um, and I was teaching English again in Prague. And then I left Prague without the Spanish boyfriend. Um, and I moved. Well, I traveled for quite a while because I had a visa that allowed me to be in Europe, so I took advantage of that. And then I moved. I actually went back to the U.S. for the first time for a longer period. So I was there for 9 or 10 months that time. And I taught English at some camps in the US. And then I worked on a campaign. This was the 2018 midterm elections. So I worked on a campaign as an events coordinator. And then after that, I moved to England to do a master's degree in nonfiction creative writing. But then COVID happened. And so I ended up dropping out of the master's degree program. And 2020, 2021 was crazy, obviously, especially like if you were like me and, moved around a lot and didn't really have kind of a place that you could just go and live there for a while. So I was all around the world trying to I wasn't. I was in England, then I went back to Vermont for 6 months, and then I ended up going back to Vietnam because Vietnam had COVID really well under control. And so I could kind of live freely. I was back there for 6 months teaching when they had an outbreak there, and I wasn't going to go through lockdown again because in the meantime the US was opening up and all of like Europe and was opening up. So I went back to the US. This was spring of 2021, and I got back and my friend picked me up from the airport. We went and got me my first vaccines like immediately. Like I landed and like went to the pharmacy. And then I got back to her place and stayed with her and her husband. And I was like, can't be in the US, can't do this. So I was just Googling and somehow I found the D7 visa. I don't really know why it came up, but it did. And so I landed from Vietnam on June 15th of 2021. I had all of my paperwork in the mail to VFS on August 1st. Sorry, are you talking? You were muted.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. So, have you spoke about D7 close to the PC or close to the phone, the mobile, by any chance?
It like came up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, no, this is the thing. I didn't know anything about it. I'd never heard of it before.
So it
So I don't
appeared for you like on the internet, like let's say.
I mean, I was Googling like where I could live, like I was Googling stuff of like trying to figure out how to get out, but I wasn't like looking specifically at Portugal. I was just looking at, I don't know, like, where can I live abroad?
Yeah.
And because everywhere I'd lived up until that point, it was always like sponsored by work or sponsored because of school or a working holiday visa, which have expiry dates. So I wanted something that wasn't going to be the same as all of those. That was like, could be more permanent. I don't even remember if I was actually looking with those criteria, but somehow I found it. So I landed from Vietnam June 15th, 2021. By August 1st, I had all of my documents ready to go in an envelope sent off to VFS Global, which is who processes stuff in the US for visas. And then I was in Portugal on October 19th, I think it was, 2021. And that's where I've been ever since.
Wow.
So that's it.
What a journey. What a journey, no? So, yeah. I know you're a travel lover. I know you like to travel a lot, and that's really good and meet different culture and people. And what brings you here? And also for this visa, we're gonna go there on this point. So you decided to move because of these criteria. So let's say because you found somewhere here on this case, then you could be permanent. And then you said, oh, okay, Portugal.
Yeah, I wanted a visa that wasn't going to be reliant on something else especially because of COVID, kind of put it into perspective of like how, living abroad, how insecure you can be. Because I decided to drop out of the program I was on, I had to leave the country because my visa was connected to the program I was on, so like I had a life in England, but I had to leave it because I didn't have a visa anymore. So yeah, I wanted something that wasn't attached to any of that.
And
And
how about the
also,
language? Think about that before?
no, no,
No.
that doesn't bother me. I mean, I lived in Vietnam. Like I
Yeah.
lived in Vietnam, and I knew that even if I had lived in Vietnam for the rest of my life, I was never going to be 100% fluent. Like Vietnamese is a really tough language because it's a tonal language. And like I spoke some Spanish before coming here. I've learned some French, and it's a Romance language. Like Romance languages and Latin-based languages are much easier. Not that they're easy, but they're easier to learn compared with something like Vietnamese. And not being able to understand doesn't bother me at all. Like at the beginning, it's fine. I mean, I'm lucky because I speak English, and the reality is, hate it or not, like a lot of people get pissed off when you say it, but it's just like the reality is people speak English everywhere you go. So you can get angry about that, but it's still true.
No, no, Agree. I mean, it's the language line. Then you can speak and negotiate everything and everywhere. I mean,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't
the
like when I
we try to help you.
yeah. And also, you know, like applying for visas, like I don't have to get documents translated because they're in English. So like there's no I think that's the Hague Convention. I don't know. There's a lot of these different conventions that, you know, say the legality of like cross-border documents, but I don't have to get stuff translated. Whereas like if you were coming from Vietnam to Portugal, you'd have to get everything officially translated. So it's not just like my communication, but it's like makes processes a lot easier. Yeah.
But that's a point. Then we can share a little bit about work, for example, because so let's say you didn't have to translate to Portuguese your document or certificate because you don't work for Portugal. But in case for people who would like to work for Portugal, Americans, for example, how does they do that? They need to translate the certificate to Portuguese or not? It's not necessary.
What do you mean by certificate?
I mean, like college and courses and professional course.
So, I mean, generally, like first for the visa that I'm on, I do have permission to work here, so I could get a job with a Portuguese company legally. If the Portuguese company wanted something translated, that would be up to them. But in terms of like the legal government stuff, you know, I didn't have to get anything translated. If you came and were on a work visa, I don't think you'd have. I think visa wise, in terms of dealing with the government, you never have to get anything translated. Um, the
Even
only time,
for you apply the visa,
sorry,
even for you apply the visa, so you don't need to translate it to Portugal in Portuguese.
no. So
Oh,
everything I did was in English. The only time that might not be true is if you apply for citizenship, but for visas, no. The you don't have to translate. And so a work visa would be the same thing. You know, in terms of dealing with the government, you wouldn't need to translate. Yeah,
well, that's good to know. I thought you
yeah.
need to translate something for apply to any visa. I mean, D7 or any other one. I heard that D7 was like more for retired people, so it's not. You have the option to apply for international people, let's say.
No. So it
What
is.
is exactly that?
Say that again.
What is exactly that? Like, because I always heard that. Then D7 was for the retired people, but it's not.
Yeah, it is. So it's set up as a retirement visa. It's not a retirement visa, it's a passive income visa. And so the goal of the visa was to entice, yes, retired people, or for example, if you had you know, if you had a rental income that you were making passive income off of. So the idea is that any income that you can be accepted on the D7 is passive. And the reason why a lot of retired people would be qualified for it is because of their social security or dividends from investments or those kind of things. But when I applied in 2021, they were also accepting remote work. So that they just kind of were doing that for a while. So it's not like I lied to them. I told them where my money was coming, but they kind of were seeing it as for a while as passive income, I guess, because I wouldn't be looking for work in Portugal, right? So even though I was working for my money, it was remote, and so I wasn't like a job seeker. um, but since then they've created the D8 visa, which has taken those so remote workers. So in my circumstance, if I applied now, I would have to apply for the D8. They wouldn't allow me, they wouldn't accept me. If I applied for the D7, they would say you need to apply for the D8, reapply as a D8 applicant. And so yes, it's you know, I'm not the only one who got in that way. A lot of people did get in that way back then, but they've changed it since. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, the law here in Portugal has changed a lot, and I could say then change like twice a year or every year minimum. So it's normal to happen.
Yeah.
So working, let me find here. How was for you? But you work remote yet. So how was for you that? Do you think, in your opinion or perspective, it was like easier work remote here from to US and living here in Portugal, or do you think would be better if you work for any Portuguese company or something like this?
Um, I mean, personally, I'm never going to go to an office 9 to 5. Like that's just never going to happen in my life. So, it would not be better for me to work for like a Portuguese company in that way. No, absolutely not. Um, I would work for a Portuguese company. It's not like I wouldn't work for a Portuguese company. Depending on the circumstances, there's also tax implications for me for working for a Portuguese company, which would make things complicated. Um, I don't work for a US company though. I freelance. So I have clients. Um, some of them are in the US, but they're kind of all over. And then I have my own business. So I'm my own client. But in terms of like working locally, yeah, it would make things more complicated for me tax wise. It would probably drop my pay. I would probably be working more hours for less money. These days, I don't make a lot of money, but I don't work a lot of hours, so it's like balance. Um, and then you would get into more of the language issue, depending on the job, right? Like I could go and teach English here. Like I know there's jobs teaching English here. I could probably get one tomorrow if I wanted. But otherwise, beyond that, I would need a higher level of Portuguese than I have. Like I can speak, but not in an office to colleagues in a work environment all day. Like that would be a very different level um, of Portuguese. So, yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, and on this new life, like we where we are now, I mean, we humans, we people, working a lot. Like companies are posting and working a lot in remote, and on this AI world now. How is your perspective? Because US is the one I believe is the most is the like the big country that is investing a lot on AI and online program systems, whatever. And how do you see that in yourselves work for you? Do you see it's gonna be like the future for everybody? Well, it is the reality nowadays.
Well, you know that China just released an AI model that's really, really cheap. And so it sank the US AI market because everybody's like, why would we invest in AI when China can do it so much cheaper? So it'll be interesting to see how that develops because the US wouldn't share their AI technology with China. And China just said, okay, we'll do it by ourselves. And they did it really cheaply. So, if there's no money in it, will they continue to develop it? No, nobody will put anything that there's not money in. But anyways, um, I think AI is really sad, to be honest. I think it's I just like I can't fathom why humans think that this is what we should do, but I also can't fathom how you'd be a billionaire and not just feed people and house people. But so, like we're all different, right? I think it's I think it's really sad because, we're not um taking away menial jobs, we're taking away the arts, which is crazy. Like nobody wants a novel that's written by AI. Nobody wants a painting hanging on their wall that's written by that's drawn by AI. I mean, maybe somebody does. I don't know. I think that's weird. I think like there's not really a lot that's beautiful about life. Like there's a lot that's really awful about like the human experience, but like being creative and being able to create is like one of the good things. And to think that the billionaires are taking that away from us and we're just going, okay, no worries, that's fine, is like kind of crazy. But, I guess I'm just one more person who's like, what can I do?
No, but there is a really good point on AI, I think, then helping people with this kind of thing that people can do nowadays so much quicker than in the past. This kind of program then we can do is streamline and we can work on with internet easier than in the past. So I think that everything in life is a balance. We need to care a lot about the humans being, but I think the internet is getting more and more involving people and work and kinds of jobs. Don't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I was going to say something and it's gone now. Oh, I was going to say, I think that like there's absolutely space for AI. For example, when they develop vaccines, I believe they used it for the COVID vaccine where they have to do genetic sequence, like they have to test sequences, right? I'm not a scientist, but they have to test sequences. And like for a human to input all of those sequences one at a time and to do the next one, the next one, the next one is very time consuming. Whereas an AI model can, like test the next sequence and the next, and it's just all done. And that's a very good use of AI because it's AI in a way that's benefiting humans. So there's absolutely spaces where AI can be helpful. I don't think that the general population should have access to just things like chat gpt. I mean, there's also the question of the environmental impact. Like I have a student, so I still teach English online, and I have a student who was telling me the other day that she has a teacher in her like main public school who is having them regularly use AI in the classroom. She's telling them to use it. She's assigning projects where they create something with AI. And I told her about how much water it used, and she was like, how much could it possibly be? So we looked it up together, and a Google search uses a 0.5 milliliter of water, whereas a one chat GPT request uses 500 milliliters of water, so like a full water bottle, right? And that's to cool down their systems. That's the reasons why it's so consuming. So that's not even to talk about how it's taking work away or taking creativity away, or the reality is that AI is just built on theft. AI doesn't exist if it didn't crawl the entire internet and steal everything that people have created, right? AI has no idea. If you say to an AI that's never been fed anything, that's never been taught anything, draw me a portrait of a dog, it has no idea what a dog looks like. It has to steal the concept of a dog from somebody else, from a human. And then it just regurgitates that. And as a writer, AI is stealing, it's stealing my jobs, but it's also stealing my work, which is the bigger issue, right? Because it couldn't steal my jobs if I didn't do the work that it's now has and is taking credit for.
Got it. Got your perspective. So let's jump. No, yeah, it's like it's different perspectives, but like it's a compliment for me thinking these ideas because it's like what do you do, what do we live nowadays, and I think it's everything in life has a bad and good point, and we need to find this balance for don't go over another one and the human beings as well, like we said, like you said very very well. uh, but also we need to leave these and give this space for the AI, internet, and the programs and systems nowadays because it's helpful for many kinds of ways. But also we need to take care about the other things and people
Yeah.
and human being as well. Agree totally. Um, Jumping a little bit for about travel life, then you said you are a travel lover and you have a lot of experience and stories, I believe, about traveling.
Yeah.
Do you have any funny unexpected story that you could share with us, and something that you got in your memory and you still remember, something that you never forget?
There's a million things that like I'll never forget. You want something funny? You want something, what vibe do you want?
Your space, like something then was like have funny and unexpected, or something new that you would like to share, like for people know about any good place then you have in mind.
I think that like for me, travel stories that I remember are, I think travel is always about people more than anything. This is like one of the beautiful things as in the human experience amongst all the misery is like people are just kind of good, and you can have really interesting experiences because there's beautiful places around the world, like there's beautiful landscapes, and I've been to beautiful seasides and mountains and all of that, and that's gorgeous. But like you can also look at that on Google. You can look at it on Google Earth. It's gorgeous 100%, and there's beautiful like buildings. The Eiffel Tower is amazing. There's so many, yes, there's beautiful places like that, but I think that why travel can be so addicting is not beautiful places. It's people and the experiences that you have with people, because it teaches you so much. Ultimately, we all sometimes have a cold or diarrhea, and we all laugh and cry and are hungry and thirsty and tired. And it's not, Elon Musk, just because he's a billionaire and he doesn't not need to sleep or eat or drink, he's just as human as the rest of us. And so is somebody in a mountain village in Cambodia. But anyways, so, okay, I'll tell you a story about, no, but I think that that's, I could tell you a lot of stories, but I think the stories that matter to me are very much about the people and how people have dealt with me as a foreigner. So, okay,
Sure.
so one story that always that it's just, yeah, okay. So I was traveling after I spent my year and a half in Vietnam. I spent some time traveling around Southeast Asia. And I went first to the Philippines, and then I flew from the Philippines to Bangkok, Thailand. And so every time I would land in a new country, I would go to an ATM in the airport and I would just get some cash out, because those countries are very cash based. You can't really use credit cards a lot. This was also over a decade ago, so maybe it's changed. So I would just get ATMs, or there's always airport ATMs. Out in the city, you're less likely to find an ATM depending on where you are. Okay, so I land in Bangkok and I go to the ATM to take money out, and it doesn't give me money. And sometimes the ATMs just don't work. So I go to another ATM and it doesn't give me money. And I don't know how many ATMs I went to, but I went to several ATMs, different banks, different companies, and none of them were giving me money. And I knew, first of all, that I had money in the account. And it wasn't, I don't remember what the notice was, why, what it said of why it wasn't giving me money, but it just, nothing was coming out. I had Vietnamese dong with me, the cash, and I went to the exchange desk, even though they are right next to each other. She was like, "We don't take that money." And I was like, okay. So she wouldn't trade my Vietnamese dong for Thai baht. I couldn't get any money from the ATMs. And I thought maybe, my bank had blocked my card, which doesn't really make sense because I'd been living in Southeast Asia for, almost 2 years at this point. I use my ATM card all the time. But I was like, all I need to do is get to the hostel that I have booked, and then I can get on my computer, I can get on the Wi-Fi, and I can figure out what's going on and I can fix it. But I didn't have any money. So I was like, I could get into a taxi and go to the hostel and hope that when I arrive, there's somebody there who will give me the cash to pay for the taxi. But what if there's not? So the other, what I had planned to do was to take the subway, which is in the airport of the basement of the Bangkok airport. And you just get on and then I would be there. And it was just a few, it was maybe $1 or $2 in Thai baht, but I didn't have any money. I had zero money, zero Thai baht. So I decided that the only option, so I also had tried to use a payphone in the airport to call my bank to figure out if they could unblock it, but the payphones weren't working. So I'd exhausted all of my options. So I was like, the only option left is to ask somebody for money. That's what has to happen. So I went down to the subway and I was positioned myself by the gate. And I was like, it has to be a foreign person for a few reasons. One, I need to know that they're going to speak English. And I also feel like somebody who looks like me, I was a 23-year-old backpacker, is going to understand my predicament, So I just positioned myself there and got up the courage. And I was like, what am I going to say? And then I saw this couple. I'd been in the airport for probably an hour at that point, just kind of going to all these different places. And I saw this couple who had been on my flight from the Philippines, and they were white. I didn't know where they were from at that time, but obviously that meant they were foreign. They were not Thai, and they'd been on my flight. So I went up to them and I was like, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but I can't get any money right now. And all I need to do is to get onto this subway. I don't even need money. I just need a subway ticket to get to my hostel. And they were like, oh my God, no worries. We'd be so happy to buy you a subway ticket. And they were like, where are you going? And we were all going the same direction. So they got themselves and me a subway ticket. We get onto the subway together, and they were getting off a little bit before me, and we were chatting. And they were like, we've had such bad karma this entire trip. Like, I think that they had like missed flights. Maybe they'd been sick. Like they'd had really lots of just bad things happening their entire trip. And they were like, so this we feel like is going to like reset our karma by helping you. And I was like, thank you so much. And so they got off before me, and they were like, before we get off, here's some extra money just in case you need it. And in total, they might have given me like $5 or $6, you know, like it's not like they gave me a huge amount of money, but still like it's all that I needed to get myself out of that situation. And then I got to my hostel, and there was nothing wrong with my bank, and I learned that the only ATMs that worked with my bank card were the purple ones, which weren't in the airport. So like it was just, you know, like logistically it was it was just like a really specific problem, and it was never my fault, and I couldn't have, you know, I guess maybe I could have found out about it beforehand, but yeah, I mean, they got me out of the situation and like didn't think twice about it. And I have so many stories like that of people who I've just done something just a little bit stupid to get myself into a situation where I'm like, I just kind of need help from somebody. And then people help me.
Is it only in Bangkok? Do you realize that, or it happened like this kind of thing in another country, or do you think it's Bangkok, a special country, a special place, then um, happened is with the kind of different card?
With the ATM issue?
Yeah,
So that's the only place that I can remember that specific issue happening. I was in Kyrgyzstan 2 years ago, and I was with a friend who had, I think, so he was living in Egypt, and so I think he must have had an Egyptian bank card, but maybe he was using, it doesn't matter. He had a bank card that had a 6-number PIN on it, and the majority of the ATM machines in Kyrgyzstan would only let you enter 4 numbers. So he wasn't able to get money from a lot of the ATM machines because of this. And
wow.
so he like would have to, there would always, like everywhere we went, we'd like go at the front of a grocery store, there'd be like a line of like 10 different ATM machines, and he'd have to go into each one to figure out which one would accept a 6-number PIN. So that was really annoying, you know? And it's like
Yes.
extra security, right? But in the meantime, the extra security means he just can't get money. So these things happen sometimes. And I think generally, like, what I'd recommend is like what I learned from Bangkok, which I would say I don't really do anymore, is always carry like a 20 of
Yeah,
a euro, a US dollar, or maybe a pound, like a bill that any country will change it just in case. But the problem is
yeah,
then you end
that's
up
a
spending
really
it
good
to
advice.
replace it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really good advice. Totally, yeah, that's super important because
Yeah.
nowadays we just use card for everywhere, and then we need cash.
Yeah.
Sometimes we
Exactly.
don't know which color is the cash anymore, the money.
Yeah. No, it's weird to
But
like cash is so uncommon. Even in Portugal these days, I rarely have cash. And then somebody's like, no, I don't take a card. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I can't buy that then. Just leave.
uh, the last time that I've been in UK, in London specifically, it was like the same but the opposite, because I always had some cash for this kind of issue, and nowhere was accepting cash anymore. Everywhere was card. So
Yeah.
I got with the pound bag, and
Yeah.
nowhere, even the shopping in front of the important tourist point, nowhere. So I said, okay. So everywhere is like cards, and I got the pound back and had to say, okay, so we are in the in the new generation totally now.
You know, it's so easy. Like with traveling, you don't have to get cash. Like you go into another currency and you don't have to worry about your like conversion rate and having leftovers and having the right amount of cash. You just use your card, and then you just never touch that currency, and it makes it so much so much easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay. Um, so last but not less important, back to your experience immigrant, then you said already about the G7, then it's now is another name of the visa. Um, How was for you to apply it? It was easy. How was the way, like in your experience? Because everybody has your own experience, I know.
Yeah,
And I know then you are helping people with that as well. So you can
yeah.
invite people to follow you and then find trying to talk to you as well. But how was in your experience for you that to apply that, and what was asked for you? You applied in US or you came here and applied here? How was that like for American people, let's say?
So, first of all, the D7 and the D8 are technically available to every nationality, and the process is technically the same. That doesn't mean that Portugal doesn't prioritize some nationalities over others, like every country does, but technically it's available to everybody, and everybody should have the same treatment, technically. Um, but so there's just a lot of documents. I think sometimes, so I do offer consultations to people. I always do it with the caveat of I cannot offer you legal services. I'm not a lawyer in any country, but I can just speak on my own experiences. Sometimes I think, though, that I struggle to help people because for me it's become so easy that the obstacles that people encounter, I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Because it's my sixth country, right? This is the sixth country that I've been a resident in, which means I've gone through visa processes in 6 countries. So not just that I've spent extended periods of time, but I've had an ID, I've been legal. So I mean, it's the normal stuff. You have to do an FBI background check. You have to do apostilles. You have to show means of funds. Like that's the big one for a lot of people, is like figuring out how you're going to show them that you have the money and the income that they're requiring. A really annoying one, which is, I think, something that the Portuguese government ought to get rid of, but is not unique, is that you have to have accommodation before you apply for your visa. And this is absolutely a contributing factor to the housing crisis in Portugal, because people are so desperate to get in their applications that they just sign a lease for whatever. They don't care. They're like, I'll move somewhere after a few months once I'm in the country, and I'll give you this money now because I need something. They need a legal lease. So, a lot of people ask me, like, can I just have my Portuguese friend sign a letter that says I'm going to stay with them? No. The answer to that is no, you cannot. The only way you could do that is if your Portuguese friend gave you a legal lease in a room in their home, but then they would have to pay taxes on the money that they're saying you're giving them. So a lot of people won't do that because then it affects their tax returns, right? Airbnbs, no. Used to be able to do it. You can't do it anymore. So you have to have a legal apartment, or you could buy as well. But, you have to do all of this before you apply for the visa. That's part of the initial application that goes into VFS. And then it's just like, a lot of it's really simple. Like you have to have passport photos and, stuff like that. You have to be in the US. You are not allowed to apply for the visa from Portugal. A lot of people come here anyways. You're not allowed to do it. And people say, oh, but everybody gets away with it. The thing is, like, everybody's going to get away with it until somebody doesn't. And do you want that to be you? I mean,
Fair.
I will mess around with, like, I will play fast and loose with so many things in my life, but I will never play fast and loose with visa applications. Because if you get a red mark on your like person as an applicant for visas, it is not just a red mark for that country, it's a red mark for that's it, for every country for the rest of your life. So
I usually say the same. That's the first advice that I say. So I don't recommend anyone to stay illegally anywhere because it's complicated. And so that was the first point, and I always was worried about to do everything right, everything correct, exactly because of this. Because you're going to another, like it's not your comfort zone. You are going to a new culture, a new country, a new things, a new
yeah,
life. So you need to go like right and apply for that, like what requested for the country.
yeah,
So that's really check. That's really a principal point to worry about.
yeah,
Totally agree.
yeah. But yeah,
Okay,
I'll
so
just
after
my
that, how long was
sorry,
for you? What you waiting? How long was while you're waiting?
for the visa.
Yeah, for the visa.
So like I said, I had everything in the mail August 1st and I was in the country October 19th. So I don't remember exactly, you know what, I could probably find it in my email. I don't remember exactly when I got the email saying that it was approved. But it was, so yeah, August 1st it was in. I did have a small issue where they told me, or they said in like their checklist form. So this is VFS Global that you deal with, which is a private company. It's not the Portuguese consulate. So VFS Global had like their checklist, which is always wrong and always not up to date. It said that if you get the FBI background check and you leave it in the sealed envelope, you don't need to apostille it. And it said it right there on their website. And then so that's exactly how I sent it. It arrived, I didn't touch it. I put it in with all my other documents in its original envelope. And they were like, oh, this needs to be apostilled. And I was like, your website says not. And this woman like argued with me. And I was like, your website's wrong. And she was like, tell them that. And I was like, you are them. I'm telling you because you are them. It's your company. It was so frustrating. But anyways, I ended up having to get it apostilled. So luckily, there's also an email copy that they send you, and I got the email printed out, apostilled that, and then sent it in. But even with that, okay, so I have the email. It's from October 5th. So that means I sent it in on August 1st. I got the email on October 5th, so a little over 2 months. I think they say 60 days is their deadline, but I would be surprised if they're still sticking to that. So then what you have to do is you send in your passport, and they put the visa in your passport, and then they send your passport back to you. And so I was in Portugal on October 19th.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You like or you enjoy to be here? What are the positive and negative points for you? Comparing
Yeah.
comparing to the country then where you came, like from Vermont in US. So comparing there the life that you had there and here, what for you like pretty different, or what do you like most or not?
Well, I haven't really lived, I mean, I spent 6 months in COVID times in Vermont at my parents' house, but I really haven't lived there since I was like 17. So I don't have a lot of like adult experience. Like I've never worked there. I've never had my own home there. You know, I've never like lived there as an adult. But growing up there, it's very rural. It's a beautiful place. If you ever go to the US, like Vermont is very pretty. You know, the pictures of like beautiful fall foliage, probably Vermont because it's very pretty. But anyways, it's a very comfortable place to live. Like I would say that I could compare it more with like the other places that I've lived abroad. And Portugal for me is very easy. I respect that like for a lot of Americans moving abroad, it's like a huge culture shock. But you know, as somebody who like lived in Vietnam, it's like a very easy place, you know. There's nothing that happens here that's like, whoa, that's so different from my country. You know, it's like you get into a car, like I drive here and it's like, I mean, the way that they drive roundabouts here makes absolutely no sense, but I just drive them how I want to drive them. It's fine. But you know, the houses are the same. The French, like my Portuguese friends have the same cultural references. You know, they might not know all of the movies I watched growing up, but they know most of them. And so I find it to just be a very comfortable place, which I think after living abroad in so many different places is like something that I was looking for. Like Vietnam is one of my favorite places in the world, and I loved living there, but it's constantly overwhelming because I mean, I lived in Ho Chi Minh, which is a massive city, so that makes it constantly overwhelming. But then just the processes are so different, and the language is so different. You know, like I'm fine in Portuguese. Like I was fine in Portuguese quite early to like go to the grocery store and like do everyday things. But now, like I can have conversations and it's fine. But that language was always going to be an issue. But then it's more challenging than somewhere like Ireland or Australia where it's like English and everything's just very much the same. And it's like, why am I even abroad? So I like that balance of like, it's like a little bit of a challenge every day, but like not too much that it's exhausting.
That's good. And what's your negative point in your perspective?
I mean, oof, the way they
That's a tough question. I know. I know because every so every people that I invite and we share, we speak, it's always the same. Oof. And
yeah.
these questions.
Well,
Okay,
it's like
let me think of
I mean,
well,
okay, like
everywhere. The positive and negative. Even it's not
yeah,
gonna be like bigger thing, but everywhere we're gonna find like good and bad things. It's normal.
yeah, of course.
No,
So I'll just like plug myself. So my social media handles are always the country jumper, and I am on TikTok. I'm on all the social medias, but I'm most active on TikTok. And it's like I can make 500 videos about all these things that I love about Portugal, and then I'll make one thing about something that's driving me crazy. And they're like, "Leave if you don't like it. Then what's wrong with you? You want it to be like America? Like what? Just go, get out of here." And it's like, okay. But
okay.
anyways,
We have
I
this
mean
point as well.
that's just how people are, right?
Apart
On
from
social
that,
media.
yeah, I know.
I,
I totally understand you. But apart from that,
yeah, no.
so
I
let's
just
say
mean like I'm
it's
careful
so
about I know I'm just saying I just mean that I'm careful like about saying the negative things because people are like, well, then just go home. I'm like, that's not the
yeah,
point. But anyways, I would say that driving, I really don't like the way that they drive here. I find it to be very unsafe. And the thing is also, so I don't have a car. I rent cars sometimes. So sometimes I drive, but I take a lot of Ubers and but it's more as a pedestrian. I find sometimes walking through the city here to be like borderline scary because there's places where there's like no the sidewalk is really slim, or if there's a sidewalk they just have parked their cars there, and I just like want to take a golf bat and just like hit all of the cars that are parked on the sidewalk because I'm like, this is not for you, this is for me as a pedestrian. And then I'm in the street where they're driving fast and there's no room for the two cars to go both ways, and it just feels like you're like this close away from death because you just wanted to go to the grocery store. And it doesn't feel like that's something that should be happening in Portugal, just like on a daily basis. And the reality is there are like, there are pedestrian deaths and there are like motorbike deaths like quite often. The statistics, like, it's not the top in the EU by any means, but it might be the top in Western Europe. Um, that I think that really bothers me because like, it's just not nice to walk out your door and just immediately be like you're like tensed up and like fighting for your life. Um, so I would say that that's something that does get to me, and I think that that kind of goes hand in hand with like the general like development of the country because the sidewalks should be developed, the roads should be developed to accommodate the world that currently is, not the world that was 300 years ago. And like the calçadas are beautiful, but we need to fix them. I think that's a
yeah.
big thing. That's like a day-to-day thing. There's probably other things like that bother me every once in a while, but that's like a day-to-day thing where I have to deal with it constantly. Yeah.
What do you miss from Vermont apart from your family?
Say that again.
What do you miss from Vermont? From your city, your country, apart from your family, of course.
I miss boxed Kraft mac and cheese. And
That's a good point. Okay.
I kind of casually mention that to all the Americans I know, and anytime they take a trip, they'll be like, "Oh, I bought you a gift." I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much."
Uh,
I never ask for it. They always just bring it back. And I miss maple syrup. I mean, I don't know. I don't miss much. Like, yeah, I mean, I really can't think of things that I miss. Like, sure, there's items where it's like, I'm gonna have my brother bring me a face soap that I really like, but like that's not important, that doesn't affect my life. I miss my friends. Like I have, my oldest friends are in the US because that's where I was when I was younger.
sure.
And so yeah, I definitely miss them. And I wish Americans would travel more and they would get on planes, but maybe one day. But like culturally, no, I don't miss anything about the US. Um, I think that like when I've lived in countries like Vietnam or the Czech Republic as well was also a hard language. sometimes I would really have to hype myself up to like do a normal thing, like go to the post office, and I would have to kind of like think of how I was going to do this interaction, because like especially, you know, at the post office workers are known for kind of being grumpy, right? Around the world. And so you have to kind of think like, okay, I know that they're going to be a little bit rude to me because I'm American and I don't speak Czech. And so like, how am I going to do this interaction? Or maybe I just don't. Maybe I just don't need to mail this thing. And I don't have that here because it's not, those things aren't difficult for me. Like I can just go to the post office. That's fine. So culturally, and like there's yeah. So anyways, what I mean is like when I lived in those countries, I would say I missed the ease of like living in the US and just being able to go out and do what I needed to do. But here that's not an issue.
Yeah, that's a great country. I like being here as well. So I feel
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, I think, when we live in somewhere, is feel home.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Caitlin, thank you very much for your time. If you would like to share anything else with us, feel free. And I would just ask you to leave any advice for people who would like to move to here and be an immigrant as well. Not only for Americans, but the international people then are looking for, because Portugal is getting more and more multicultural.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Americans moving to here now. We have a lot of Canadians moving to here now, and Europeans in general, and Americans company as well. So it's really good. I believe it's good for the growing for the country. They do this in the right way, it's gonna be like a really good point for the
Yeah.
country. And so leave your advice, and thank you very much for you being here, for you share a little bit about yourself, about your lifestyle, and if you'd like to invite people to follow you as well, feel free.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. So, as I mentioned, I'm the country jumper on everything. All the social medias you could find, I'm there. Most active on TikTok, and my TikTok is full of advice about moving to Portugal. Um, and then you can also book a consultation with me. So you can find my link on TikTok, or if you just go to thecountryjumper.com/social, then you can book a consultation. And I'm happy to answer your direct questions. But I think that like the general advice of moving to Portugal or to anywhere from anywhere that I would give is, if you want to go, if you're in a position where you're choosing to go, right? You're not being forced to leave your country, then you need to want to go where you're going. And I know that that sounds like I'm saying nothing, but people come to certain places and they're like, but why isn't it like where I left? And it's like, well, if you wanted it to be like where you left, then you could just stay where you left. You didn't have to go. So like Portugal is going to be Portugal, and you cannot like it, but Portugal is not going to change for you. Wherever you go is going to be where you are, right? And that place is not going to change for you. You can choose to change for it, or you cannot, and it's going to be really difficult. The other thing I would say is that you're going to have a honeymoon phase where you're going to be in love with that place that you've moved to. It could be a week and it could be a year. And after that honeymoon phase is probably the most difficult point, because if you're planning on staying long term, you kind of have this dip, right? You've had this like, yay, everything's great. Oh my God, I can't believe I got here. And then like you just have to do a normal life. You have to like go to the grocery store, and you're going to get sick, and you have to go to the pharmacy or the doctor, whatever. And you just like, now it's like not glamorous anymore because life isn't always glamorous. And that's when you're going to be tempted to bail and leave. And I think that that's when you have to be like, okay, I'm just going to ride this out, and you're just going to move forward with this very mundane everyday life that you have here in this new place. And if you can get past that hump, then you'll be good forever.
Love that. That's a really good advice. And that's a day by life. Thank you very
Sorry.
much. That's a daily life. So that's a day then you have to deal with.
Exactly.
Thank you
Exactly.
very much. I hope we have a drink soon and catch up a little bit more.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
for being here. Okay.
Thank you so
Cheers.
much.
Thank you,
Have a
everybody. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and share with friends. Thank you.